Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I am one of your hosts, Jimmy Gasparo, and what a fun and exciting episode I know we are going to have today because I have not one but two guests, and we're talking about a project that I really didn't know much about until I saw the recent Volume 3 of the Curie Society game of code on social media, and it sounded like a fascinating project. I reached out to one of my guests, and I was able to get two guests on who worked on the project. So we are talking to both Barbara Perez Marquez and Sonia Liao about the Curie Society Game of Code, which will be out March 24th, 2026. Barbara and Sonia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. It's fun to be
Yes.
here.
Yep. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, so the Curie Society wasn't something I was really, familiar with until I think maybe it was Barbara that actually had posted something about it. Um, and just the little I had read about it, it sounded like a great graphic novel series, and I wanted to talk about it. So I reached out and then got Barbara on, and she reached out to Sonia. So Barbara, can you or Sonia, I mean, you've been with the project from the beginning. Um, what is the Curie Society series about?
So Curie Society is about a secret society of female STEAM uh students. So people, especially STEAM is science, technology, engineering, art, math. I don't remember. But anyway,
Yeah.
I
it's
think
it's
you got it.
basically yeah. Yeah, it's like a secret network of females basically like female uh like agents who have bases all over the world, and they promote um oh god, it's been a while.
No,
Yeah, I think
you've been doing it. You've
yeah,
been doing it
maybe
so long, but you got it. Yeah. So basically, the team there's three main characters, Taj, Maya, and Simone, and they are sort of recruited into the secret society that has scientists all over the world, and they're sort of continuing this mission of advancing all of these STEM subjects with sort of like women forward. After sort of like Marie Curie, that's sort of where the society gets its name. And yeah, in this third volume, I think we see some really exciting growth for the trio. I came into the project and I got the chance to read the first two volumes that Sonia had amazing art on. And just like seeing where the characters sort of started and where we could take them was sort of like really exciting to keep exploring what we could do with them.
Before we get into the character side of it, and I mean, I love the characters in Game of Code, so I want to go back and read volumes 1 and 2 now. But I'm just curious, Barbara, with being brought onto this project in volume 3, and because it is fairly science. I don't want to say science heavy. I don't want to give the impression that like it's dense. It's very fun, and there's a lot of interesting concepts in it. Um, but, like, what are kind of your, I guess, marching orders when you get something like this from editorial as to, like, "Yeah, we need you to talk about, you know, AI," or, "We need you to talk about some type of, like, computer code." Like, how does that all work? And is that
All
something you had
comes
a
together.
familiarity with beforehand? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had no idea. So the really fun format that the Curie Society at large as a series brings is that EEP is working with MIT Press, and each of the volumes actually gets assigned sort of like a subject matter expert. So I got to sort of pitch my here's a crazy concept in science that I just knew as a sort of layperson, just a writer being like, I could probably essentially, make up some interesting things about, in this particular case for the game of code, we have a lot of AI heavy subject matters. And then MIT Press and the editorial team finds a subject matter expert. So we use real life science and real life concepts and adapt them into the sort of fictional story. So it was an extra sort of challenge to be like, well, here's what I think theoretically it's not in the plot, but like, like the secret laser of the villain may do this. And then we'd get points from the scientists being like, "Oh, actually, that's not really how that's working." So it was a nice, interesting calibration to find both, right? Like what's approachable, what's interesting, like what makes good plot, and also what can we teach readers and be like, hey, actually, I didn't make up large language models. Like those are obviously all around us, in particular with recent sort of years and sort of where we are in technology. But it's interesting to be able to sort of present them in a way that may sort of be a jumping board for readers to be like, actually, I do want to learn more about this and learn from the real people that are in charge of that.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that's kind of a I like that concept that they kind of assigned you like a like an
Yeah.
expert for that volume that you could rely on. Because the interesting thing, like when you're reading it, the game of code, and like it opens, it's the third volume, it opens up, and the character of Taj is playing like an online game,
Hmm.
combat, I think it's combat
Yeah.
arena.
Combat arena. Yeah.
And but when they when Taj gets together, with the other 2 members, and they start talking about, like, their project, like, they're, like, right into, like, scientific concepts, right away. So I was very curious as to, oh, like, like, is this
Yep.
really research heavy? Do they get somebody, like, on standby to help with some of it? Like, um, so that's pretty fascinating. Sonia, what has your experience been like, being on this as, the penciler from like the very beginning, and working with, different writers at times? Like it is like it has what has that collaboration been like with the different writers that you've worked with?
Um, yes. So I've been here since the first volume, so things have definitely evolved a lot. It is nice to come back to a world and characters that I am familiar with. So that's always good. With the writers, I actually don't talk directly with the writers. I actually work mostly with EEP and is it Page Turner? Um,
Hmm.
because this whole project is very collaborative. I do know that like especially for book three, there's just so much going on, right? The writer, the MIT press, um, scientists. Apparently in book one, they actually had to like talk to a bunch of students to come in and fact checked the science stuff. And of course, there are situations where you're halfway through the book, and then suddenly MIT comes back and is like, actually, this thing that you mentioned on page 5 doesn't work. So you have to
Yeah.
redo it. So it's definitely a learning process. Like book one was definitely there are more of those issues, right? Because
Yeah.
I think everyone was just getting used to going back and forth, right? Like the writer comes up with something, gives it to me, I draw it, and then like there was a lot of disconnect. So I know for book two and book three, they were working really hard to try and uh make sure we're all on the same page, or like
Yeah.
there's a lot less of that. Um, I think like focusing on the science for, for each book might actually have helped because I think so. Book one is more of like a general introduction. So like it's the girls are all attending college for the first time, and then they get recruited into the Curie Society. So it's definitely like an introduction explaining what the Curie Society is, like what the enemy is, the Eris is it Eris?
Yeah. The
Anyways, yeah,
Yeah,
organization. Yeah.
yes.
yeah.
Like that's the evil organization.
Yeah.
Well, and then the books after that. So book two was mostly about Maya. And book three is about Taj. So so I would always recommend reading book one first, and then obviously in order. But if you read book one and then book three, I think it's okay. but of course characters develop, throughout the
Yeah.
books. Um, so yeah, like I had a pretty interesting time working so the people I work directly with hasn't changed, but I do know like the writers have changed, the scientists behind the scenes have
Yeah.
changed. Um, but yeah.
And what is it like with when you are I mean, because I know if I'm not sure about book 1, you can tell me, but I know for, like, book 2, you're credited as, like, the artist, but for book 3, they had, like, a penciler and an inker. Is that, like is that all, like, an editorial decision, or does that, like, impact how you approach a project if you're going to just do pencils rather than if you're doing, like, pencils and inking?
Um, so that happened because book 3 was coming out at the same time I was working on another project. So I actually had less time to work on it, and there was some back and forth, and then EEP came back and was like, "Okay, like you can work as just a penciler, and then they'll have someone else come in to finish the pages." So for me, it's just removing a step, because for books 1 and 2, I would pencil, get it approved, and then I would ink. Well, book 3, I would just pencil, hand it to the inker, and then just keep working that way. And I really appreciate how understanding they were, since it was kind of a struggle schedule-wise, for book 3. And I know, like, because of the whole inker situation, I think it's delayed a little bit, but, I'm glad they were able to find an inker, and they were able to, uh, make the pencils, um, presentable for print. But yeah,
I know,
yeah,
I
so
the they definitely did. The book looks great. I mean, it really does, and I think for book 3 in particular, I wanna say, was it Joanna Taylor that colored
Yeah.
it? Who I think
Yeah, so
is
we
the
have so it's
yeah.
myself writing, Sonia with with the pencils, then we have Jane McIlvaine who did the inks, Joanna Taylor was our colorist, and then we had AW's Josh Reed for letters, which, like, it's similar to Sonia's sort of, experience. For better or worse, we didn't really get to interface with each other. Like, I found out about the rest of the team beyond Sonia when I read sort of, like, the final proof that we were sort of checking for, like, last dialogue changes, and it's so fun to see just how this team, right? Like, we keep if you keep thinking about, like, well, we just expanded how many people it took to come up with this to finish this book, and still make it cohesive, right? Because it looks pretty seamless, if you check out the first 2 books, like, everybody sort of came together and it feels right, it feels like a Curie Society book. It doesn't feel like suddenly we had, like, a complete, like, team change, even though we did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Um, yeah, it does seem, very, very cohesive. So, Barbara, when you come in and like, as you said, there's already 2 volumes and you enjoyed like seeing where the characters were and where you could take them. So not worrying about the science side of it, just like this was essentially Taj's book and focusing on Taj. What was like the most enjoyable part of kind of telling Taj's story for you in terms of like creatively in the writing of it?
Yeah. It was really fun to be able to sort of look at the 2 volumes just while I was sort of, getting acquaintance with the project, but also thinking of, like, what can I bring that's not just my own flavoring as a storyteller, but also that adds, volumes to this already sort of rich story with, like, a really well-established world, right? Like, I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the Curie Society, we have Eris, we have our main characters, and I basically try to find okay, as a reader of the first 2 books, now that I get to sort of be at the like, behind the wheel, I'm like, "What do I wanna see?" And that's sort of how I landed on, like, I'd love to learn more about Taj, who is sort of this, like, rough and tumble, right, type of character, she's the coder of the team, but she is very much even with the first 2 volumes, and then in this book, we get to see a little bit of how her personality came to be like that. She's sort of the more, um, sort of at arm's length type of character. She likes what she likes, she's always on combat arena, And she has this connection back home that we learn in this book, that she's sort of originally from Detroit area. Um, and that she left a lot of like sort of local friends that were younger than her to come to university and then eventually sort of find herself in the Curie Society. So to be able to find those gaps and then to sort of get right that editorial freedom to come up with a completely original story for this character, building on those blocks that already existed and adding more depth to the world was really fun. In particular, Taj's like whole childhood crew, it's like my ode to like the friends that I left back home when I moved to the United States, and eventually like becoming a writer and all that stuff. And then to be able to sort of branch out for the characters in that same way. This book we get to see Simone like turn a year older, and that's a great way to sort of see where the book started to where the book is at right now. At this point, they've been a full year in university, so we get to see Simone sort of grow a year older because it's her birthday. And then with Maya, who's sort of the prissy type character that bumps head with Taj very often, we actually get to see the first kiss with her girlfriend in this book, which is really wonderful because I was like, yeah, we have queer representation. I was like, well, now we need to make it a little queerer because now I'm here.
I did pick up on that. There's I did like there was like one scene where like you just see Taj is just kind of like still playing, still playing, still playing, and all the stuff happens
Yeah.
like in the background behind her. Um, I thought that was very well done. Sonia, just because I have not yet read volumes 1 and 2 yet, so I don't know how much the game that Taj plays, the combat arena shows up, but I was really curious about those character designs. Was that something that came up like in the script? Was that something that was more for you for like the panels that show the in-game characters? Because I thought I really liked them.
Those were created for this book. So it was books 1 and 2. Taj is definitely like the tech girl in the background, while this one I think is the first introduction of Combat Arena, the whole thing. And I think
Okay.
following the script, there's definitely pointers in the script of like the style. It's been a while, but I remember you mentioned Barbara mentioned a couple of references, and so based on that, I then whipped up a bunch of character designs and then showed it to the editorial team and then had them decide whether or not they look good. Um, and then of course, because they're like in game versus out of game, I want to have fun with that with different panel styles, just to show that like this is in virtual reality and versus like when they're out in the real world. Um, but yeah, I did have a lot of fun designing some of the things. I do like I think oh, one of the characters had like little springs, having him
Yeah.
like whip around. Yeah, yeah, I like those little details. Those were mostly in the script, I believe.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, when
I go ahead, Barbara.
No, to speak a little bit of that, even today I was actually on social media talking to Joanna, who had a similar experience. I just, as writers, sometimes we add things to script that you're like, do with this what you will, like I trust like the artist and the colorist, like they'll take it where they need to take it. But I remember that I was like I left Sonia, I was like, "I don't know, kinda like this and that," and, like, came back to this, like, really awesome, sort of, like, cobbled together robots because it's kinda like the spirit of the game, right? As we were sort of developing what does the game actually look like if we're gonna show it on the page, we were thinking about, like, not necessarily making something that's so one to what we currently have, but what would lend itself to useful to the story. So to be able to know that like putting the reference in the script counts for something because it gets that
Oh yeah.
springboard going to be like, okay, and now we add another layer and we add another layer and we end up with these really fun designs. For myself, I remember I think I said I was like it was like, Katamari Damacy that and like this there's like this 90s anime called Metabots
Oh,
Uh,
yes, yes.
yeah, I was like, here are some little robots, and what if we make our own little robots? So
I really like the designs. I thought it was a lot of fun. One of the other things I wanted to say, Sonia, is that well, and to Barbara too, that part of this story is they um they get to attend like a conference at the same time that there's like a combat, kind of convention as well. And it sounds great.
Mhm.
Like, oh, we're going to go try and do one of our missions here, and Taj will get a chance to connect with her friends. But I always feel for the artist, because sometimes writers have like great ideas and it's like, oh, this is so good for the story. And then you're like, I'm sorry, Sonia, but you're gonna have to draw several panels with just people standing around. You're like, you're basically gonna have to you're basically gonna have to design like a convention floor and maybe like
Yes.
20 to 30 people around. And I'm like, it looks really good. And I'm like, I don't think like listeners or readers sometimes appreciate like the amount of work that goes into like a single panel like that.
this
But
is a
well done.
podcast. You can't
Oh,
see that
thank
I'm
you.
covering my face in shame. I know,
No,
and I
it's
think
totally
but it's the same thing. It's true. It's like, you put a crowd scene and you're like, "Oh, it's really easy for me to say, and there's 500 people in this room. Good luck."
Yeah.
But we again, like you tried to take those considerations as writer to be like, "Sonia, I'm so sorry. We're gonna try to cut it down, but good luck."
But yeah, Sonia, I'm curious. Like, do you feel like that when you get a scene like that? I mean, you did a really nice job. In particular, like the one where the girls are like go to like their convention. It's really like laid out well. It's very organized. It's like,
Oh,
oh, this looks great. This is like it's composed very well. But yeah, I thought you did a nice job with all of those.
thank you. It really helps that I've been to conventions before. I feel like if I had never gone to a single convention, I would be so confused. But, thankfully at this point in time, I've gone to conventions as a visitor, I've gone to conventions as a vendor. So I feel like I have a generally better idea how things are set up. And of course, like if the story calls for it, the story calls for it, right? Like it's a convention, so you have to draw a lot of people. And sometimes it's fun, right? Like it's like Where's Waddle thing, where like you just sit there and you just draw all these little details. And then you're like, oh, I want to add some Easter eggs here and there. I want to maybe this one character, like for so to me, drawing the initial scene is actually not that bad. The the really mind heavy part, the part that makes takes up the most brain space is when the panels changes angles. And then I have to remember where all the booths are. So after I draw the initial opening scene, that becomes my reference for the rest of the book. And then sometimes I'm so mad at myself. I'm just like, why did I draw this complicated array of keychains on the first panel? Now I have to draw this keychain thing like for 5 more pages in the background, because according to this little map I drew, you wouldn't be able to see this keychain tower when from a certain angle. So so that was definitely, like, what took up a lot of brain space, and I feel like I I do appreciate the inker who was able to, again, like, translate some of these scribbles, because 'cause I'm just like, I'm having a difficult time, uh, drawing everything according to my map. I feel like for the inkers, even worse. But yeah, like, I did have a lot of fun though, like I said, like, sometimes you just want to draw lots of stuff, and, like, it's so compared to, I think, was it book 2? They were in, like, this big building, but, like, sometimes, like, the building just has a bunch of empty walls, so, like, sometimes when you're trying to fill the panel, you're like, "Oh, I don't know what's going," like, it basically looks like a bunch of talking heads against blank backgrounds. So, at least for the convention, there were, like, nice background things going on. I never had to worry about filling the background with random dots, or, like, sometimes the characters have, like, little cross hatching to try to make the background look less empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, one of the other things I wanted to say, because the opposite of a detail heavy convention panel, there are, a lot of this is, Taj sitting at the computer and playing her game, and or you know Taj looking at her phone, and another character like kind of like reacting to her doing that in the background. One of the things I thought you did really well is like in terms of like the posture of the characters. Like you really like there's always like definite changes from panel to panel where you can there's a lot of you'll hear a lot about like in terms of facial acting, and certainly for this it is good, but I think you can't discount like body posture, and I think you do a really good job of like the positioning and the posture of your characters to kind of you know tell part of the like either the thought or the emotion of what's going on. I think it made the panels very interesting to kind of take a look at like why is she sitting like this, or it wasn't always there's always something different. I just thought that was very well done. Is that something
Thank
that you
you.
really think about and work on, and a lot of photo reference or
Um, Not photo reference. So this is the advantage of working on like the third book of a series. I feel like the first book was when we really ironed out each girl's character and kind of like decide like, oh, again, like Maya's really prissy, like she has really high standards, more of a preppy style. Um, Simone is like like a prodigy, but she's
Mhm.
also young compared to everyone else. She's like, I think she turned 16 in this book,
Yeah.
but everyone else is like in like normal college age. And how like that kind of affects things, how like she kind of feels like a kid, but like she's just as she's just as deserving to be in university as everyone else, right? Like she's not supposed to be like just a sidekick or whatever. Like her voice matters too. And Taj is having that more sassy, tomboyish. I think like the first book really emphasized that tech and parkour.
Yeah.
So I feel
yeah.
like these two things were like her character, and I think like as a comic artist, kind of giving characters general like the way they hold themselves is just something that comes while you work on a book, especially like a longer graphic novel. As you start working, you kind of assign characters their own personalities and their own the way they sit and stuff. Just because there's so many different camera angles, right? Like you don't want to suddenly have like looking over the back of the head and just have no idea who the character is. So you start like really having like a bunch of like pre-made things like, oh, this character sits this way. This character looks like this from this angle. I know book one. So okay, book one originally, I drew all the characters wearing the same exact outfit throughout the entire book because I think like drew a character sheet and I just followed that. And then and then later they were like, actually takes place in a college and they would not wear the same outfit the whole time. You have to change their clothes. You know, it's not like they're not like one of those cartoons where you open the closet and there's like the same outfit like 10 times. So I think because of that, like I actually came up with a silhouette. Basically, each character has their own silhouette. Like Maya tends to have really high, like she has a high cinched waist, while the bottom tends to be either like a poofy skirt or like baggy pants. Like basically, each character has like their own look. This is half because, like I said, I had to redraw some of the their outfits. And so of course I can't change too much, otherwise I have to redraw more, right? So slight edits. But based on the different silhouettes, um, I think that also contributes to each character looking different. Just like having their own like little character um look, personality, uh, posture. And I know for this book, because I was just a penciler and didn't ink it, I did uh give the inker like a whole character sheet with like especially the main three, Taj, Maya, and Simone. I gave her a character sheet with with the faces from different angles since like I said, sometimes I feel like my pencils could be a little rough. So I was like, you know what? Like, if it's rough, this is what the character looks like from this angle. Oh yeah. So yeah, again, I appreciate just the effort it took to follow my pencil sketches and the character sketches. But after doing that, because I think it was decided that I would only do pencils from the beginning, and so at the beginning, I drew like all these character reference sheets, and of course, now I drew them, I might as well use them.
Yeah.
So of course, that also
Yeah.
helps me keep the characters pretty
Yeah.
consistent.
Now, Barbara, when you are, writing some of the not just the main characters, but some of the outside, cast for this, and with a project like this, do you get the opportunity to, create, new characters? And how did you work either any of those or some of the side characters into, the main story? Like when you structure this, do you look at this as like I'm going from A to B writing a graphic novel, or do you still think of it in terms of if this was out in single issues?
There was definitely a little bit of a single issue approach just because the team was really interested in the fact that similar to what Sonia was saying, that there's this like secret hack to like what the characters look like. They were also very interested in like we can't change the voice of the characters at this point. Like all of these characters have their sort of personalities ingrained into the reader's mind. So, part of a big part of the job was to make sure that I could adapt to that and sort of serve to it right. But right on the same flip side, they were also very open to be like, and then beyond that, as long as you get those voices right that are like our permanent cast, you can make whoever you want. So to be able to explore um as I mentioned, Taj sort of gets to reunite with her friends from back home. That complete cast was like from me coming into the project and saying like let's give her these friends that are like in different sort of grades than her. Nelson and her were classmates, but Ariel and Yamila are younger. And that adds on to that those dynamics that we needed for the book. And you also get the Curie Society chapter that they go to in Madrid. Those are all new characters. That turns out to be that the head scientist there was a classmate to Emma, who is one of the upper classmates in their home chapter. So again, like being able to sort of expand the world through this like web of connections. Um, Most of the job was really finding how it fits so that it lives in the world seamlessly, and thinking about like how does this expand what's at hand. So there's a lot of that. Early on, I remember on some of our revisions there was a lot of sort of like tweaking that voice since it was new to me. um and sort of finding where we left them in the last two books and where we could take them.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And so what was the real, um, not just creating the new characters and getting to tell Taj's story, but was there anything in particular that we haven't like talked about yet that you really enjoyed kind of getting to dig into and write uh, with this volume?
I think really the diversity of the characters to be able to explore them. As I mentioned, Taj's friends from back home, Nelson, Ariel, and Yamila, they're like multicultural characters and they needed to be three-dimensional. They're not necessarily, I mean, I don't know, now they exist in this world, but they're not necessarily being recruited one way or another into the society or something like that. So to be able to create characters that felt three-dimensional, that they didn't just feel like pieces to this particular plot was really important to me. And to be able to sort of make tangible bits that again felt like they built onto the world without necessarily just being set pieces. Um Both from a cultural approach for myself, as a Latina writer, um, as well as just sort of adding depth to like the possibilities of this world. And as I mentioned, like the Maya like kiss was like one thing that I was like really attached to when I was first coming up with the plot. I was like, I think Maya and her girlfriend should kiss. And I was like, this doesn't fit in the plot. You know what I'm saying? Like it was at that point, it was not necessary to the plot, but it was necessary to me as a creator. And I think it was necessary for the bigger picture of the world build. So thinking about those moments that sometimes does get finicky, right? Because we have a deadline to meet, we have a book to finish. It's like we can't just like get precious with every scene, but to be able to find sort of like where that ebb and flow sort of meets was really nice, even again on a third volume of a series. Because sometimes you see, it's not always the gradation, it's not always whatever it is, but sometimes you get a disconnect from volume to volume. But to be able to think about it holistically in a way that feels like to the vision of the like the editorial team was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think having a strong team, even if it isn't a consistent team from volume to volume, but also having a strong, editorial team really helps with that, with things like character voice and, and with tone. But yeah, I really liked all of Taj's friends. I was really waiting to get to the point where they got, you know, to interact and see how all of that went. I was like, because that's what you're building towards. Like,
Yeah.
if you've read any type of story, like as soon as you get into it, you're like, oh, Taj has these friends, and she has she has Simone and Maya, and clearly we are working towards all of
Yeah.
them getting together and kind of see how that all plays out. And then also you have like the other plot, like the undercurrent of what is going on with um what is it? The character that Ariel gets the free trip, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah, like
know,
essentially like the actual plot of the book
yeah,
The actual plot.
yeah.
with
I do.
Dakota.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Yes.
look, there's something for everybody. All right.
Yeah.
So you can follow that along and see what Decoder is doing. But I was really curious as to see how the the girls from the Curie Society and Taj's combat arena friends would interact. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. But so whatever you're into, there's something for everybody in these books. But I really enjoyed it. I didn't get a chance to finish the arc that you had sent over. I said that, Barbara, but I'm going to, and then I'm gonna have to go back and read volumes 1 and 2 because I really liked 3 a lot.
Yeah.
um so I was just curious in terms of like, is there anything else that I know that either of you have coming out that we can, mention to listeners? I mean, I think I saw a couple of things from Barbara, but Sonia, I didn't know if you had anything. But Barbara, do you want to go first? And is there some other stuff that you have coming out this year?
Sure. Yeah. So, this book comes out March 24th this year. And then I have three other releases. So if you like this one, please check out the other books. I also helped adapt Jenny Han's To All the Boys I've Loved Before that comes out in May. I have a YA romantasy book that is like sort of like really heavily like sort of fantasy and obviously romance skewed that's coming out in July that's called To Dance the Moon and Stars. And then in August I'm coming back to middle grade, which is sort of where I started with the Library of Memories. And yeah, so it's a lot of books this year, but we're excited.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the opposite of me. I think Game of Code is the only book I have coming out this year. Oh, sorry.
No, okay. So Game of Code, but you also have some other books that I am very curious about. I know I think they came out a few years ago, but just I wasn't, again, just something I wasn't familiar with. But I was looking on your, I think, website, Sonia. Um, the books that you worked on, A Thief Among the Trees and A Spark Within the Forge, from I guess 2017. They or no, they were from 2020 and 2022. Yeah, they look fantastic. And so I want to go. That's the one thing I love about this podcast, talking to folks that I like aren't super familiar with their work, and then doing the research and discovering things. And I'm like, all right, there's two more books to add to my to read pile. They look really good. So
Thank you. I think the idea behind those two was they are prequel stories for an ongoing um series called, I think, Ember in the Ashes. So it's a young adult, basically it's like a book series. And then they
yeah,
wanted to create prequel comics. So each comic each book is relatively standalone, and they kind of talk about the backgrounds of the characters. The first one, this has been a long time. I think the first one talks about Elias, who is one of the deuterogonists from the book series, and the second book is Laia, who I think is also one of the protagonists of the series. I think originally there were supposed to be 3 books, but after book 2, I haven't heard back from them, so I don't know if they're gonna continue with that at all. Because each book is standalone and a prequel, I feel like the author wants to prioritize writing the next book. You know what I mean? As opposed to the next prologue chapter of a background character. But that was kind of fun to work on. It's similar to any kind of series. Like you're not I came into that series not knowing anything, having to draw the characters from scratch, creating character designs and things. It was actually kind of funny because afterwards, so after I finished the books, I realized that the fans had already created their own fan versions of the characters. And then I was like, oh no, I had no idea. I'm a fake fan. Like the characters I drew, I just based off of like the script and like my own thoughts. But then like apparently these characters already had like these fan designs that people had already decided that this is what the character looks like. So yeah, that kind of yeah. So that kind of thing happens. Like I said, Game of Code is the only book that I'm sure is being published in 2026. I finished a book for Harper Alley, but you know how publishing goes, right? Like I just finished it, but it might not. I don't know if it's gonna come out this year or next year, or who knows. Um, I'm not even sure if I'm a like how I should put it. So basically, it's called Hex and Havoc, and it's like another like um, fantasy book. With like it's I don't even know. It's been so long. Sometimes I just focus so much on just drawing. It's like just finishing the inks. This one I actually colored as well. So finishing the colors that like if you ask me the characters' names and then the plot, I'm just like, I have no idea. It's been too long. Okay. I've been focusing so hard on coloring these characters for months that like what are these characters' names? I have no idea. And that just turned I have to turn on the so every time I draw something like for like pencils, I usually add my own lettering just to make sure that all the dialogue and the faces are matching. Sometimes when people ask me questions, I have to go and turn that little text layer on to read what they're saying and then be like, oh, this character's name is Barney. I remember now. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't know. So no, so Hex and Havoc, like I said, I just finished. So that one I think they're reviewing it right now. But I don't know if it's coming out in 2026. Um it's like another really long book, so I feel like the review process is also pretty long.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes so folks can go to your website and follow along for when that stuff does come out. Barbara, I did want to say not that I don't want to hear about to all the boys I've loved before or to dance the moon and stars, but the concept that I read for the Library of Memories sounds amazing. Um, and it's illustrated by Lissy Marlin.
Mhm.
Can you just like give listeners like just a couple of sentences on what that book is about? That comes out in August, right?
That's right. Yeah, that one that,
Okay.
people are really we just had the cover reveal this, it's January now, so in January. Um the Library of Memories takes place in a place called the Library of Memories where our main character Copenhagen finds herself, and there's something happening to the magic in the Library of Memories that is erasing memories, and in the process at some point, Copenhagen has lost her own memories. So she's sort of on this quest to figure out where her memories are, what's going on with the library, and then shenanigans will ensue. But similarly, again, connecting back to the game of code almost. Lissy Marlin and I are both Dominican creators. We've been working together for many, many years that we've sort of been working parallelly, and this is sort of like the culmination of that. And it was really important for us to sort of bring our heritage and just like bring more sort of like Latina voices to comics. So this is sort of, Game of Code allowed me to sort of push that into that YA STEM agenda. Library of Memories is sort of pushing that in the middle grade fantasy realm. And I mean, like Lizzie's art is like unreal. Like again, Sonia blew it out of the park, Joanna, like everybody in this book. And then Lizzie also like in the middle grade realm is just to be able to sort of work with such awesome artists. I'm just like, everybody's really excited. It's like, there's so many books coming out. I was like, I'm just excited to show you all of these cool artists. So that's why I brought Sonia today. I was like, we need to put Sonia on the pedestal. She's been working really hard on this series. So yeah, so like to be able to showcase that and see what's going to happen this year, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited for all that stuff too. And yeah, the Curie Society Volume 3, Game of Code is out March 24th, 2026. I want to make sure I got that right. Yeah, March 24th, 2026. I'll put a link in the show notes, listener, so you can make sure to get a copy of that. And I want to go check out volumes 1 and 2 because I really liked volume 3. I really liked Taj's character in this. And yeah, Sonia, I thought your art was tremendous, and I want to go back and read the volumes 1 and 2 that you worked on as well. But I just thought it's a really great series. I love the whole idea behind it. I like the whole concept, and I think when you have something like that and it's executed so well, and it's fun. I really enjoyed it. So Barbara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for bringing Sonia. Sonia, it
Yeah.
was so nice to have
Yes.
you on the podcast as well. Um, so thank you both very much. So listeners, there'll be links in the show notes. You know how that works. Rate, review us, do all the things they tell you to do about podcasts because it really does help us. You can find me on Blue Sky and TikTok. Especially, let me know what you're reading, especially if you're reading anything that Barbara or Sonia have worked on. And let me know if you get your copy of Game of Code. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you so much to Barbara and Sonia for spending some time with me talking about comics. So thank you very much, listeners, for listening. I'll see you next time. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.